Well, now I don't know what to do. You guys, what should I do?
All over again. I think you should drop the product. Yes.
Any other options?
Yes, we did. I would
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. And it was such a good example too. Wait, because I already did the homework. That wasn't recorded either, was it?
You'd be all on it, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's fine.
You should make the.
But I would prefer to go back, get out of this conversation.
Interesting. Yeah, let's start the project over. Can we start the project over? Let's start the project over one more time.
Stop your macro.
I just watched the recording, brother.
Wait, yes, go further. Yes. Now it's gonna be like to give you.
That was the thing, you have a class.
Wait, no, it is recording. I'm recording. I was recording. Yeah, it's recording down here. It's just I'm just not logged into this one, so it's still recording. Yeah.
You don't want to spend the first time like that.
And then that way we can bother.
Yeah, let's do this one more time. I apologize. Here we go. So this is like I'm gonna go back to the file. Where's my file? Downloads. I'm gonna open up Fallen Angel as if it was originally downloaded, right? And this is what it is. So it still has the old setup here. And like I said before, we are going to change these top three. So instead of these top three options, the first one is total revenue. The second one is operating income. The third one is, and this is going to be a yes or no column. Very good. This is not going to be a numeric column. This is going to be a yes or no column. Okay, great. We're going to go pull these columns with numbers, and we're going to create a formula and an if statement to go into these columns. And maybe to be just a little bit more explicit than I was before, what if we draw out that if statement that you're going to need to include in the VBA, right? You're going to need to include the VBA if statement in the VBA code. I'm just doing it here, so we're pretty clear about what that looks like, right? If, and what am I doing here? If the total revenue divided by operating income is greater than 10%, yes, else, no. Okay, so that's the equation, that's the formula that we're going to put into a VBA. But by the way, if I hard code this C4D4 into my VBA code, that's not going to work. Does that make sense? That's not going to work. So if you think that that you can just copy and paste this cell into VBA, then it's going to put, it's only going to take the C4D4 into account. It's not going to use the relative reference. Does that make sense? Okay, so one more on this one that I didn't do before. This is how you're going to do it. You're going to record a macro. You're going to use relative references. You're going to create this formula, and it's going to be, when I tab over like that, it's going to be a relative reference. And I'm going to say equals if this divided by this is less than 10%, then yes, else no. Hit enter. Then when I stop recording, look at this code. Go back to my code here. This is exactly the code that I want, okay? See all these RCs? This is row column references. It's saying -2. It's saying go to this cell, go left 2 columns, same row. That's going to be your total revenue reference. And it's relative. Why do we want the relative reference? Because we're going to go down different rows, right? However many stocks we have. Here is your operating income reference. Row cell -1, you're referencing that column next to it. If this division, right? If this division, the result of this division is less than 10%, yes or no. So this is your VBA code for that cell. Okay, good. Let me go back to the sheet. So we can use this. We can copy and paste it into the actual cell. We don't want to leave it in this macro, right? We would copy and paste it into the solution module and put it into the correct place in our code. Whatever you need. It just depends on your code, right? Whatever you need. You're definitely going to need this line right there, but you could potentially use this or that if you wanted to as well. I'll let you figure that out. Yeah, definitely this line at the minimum. Let's see. So we got that. And again, what this is, let me just show you one more time. What's the total revenue for Microsoft? I don't know. What is it? 85 billion. It's going to be some large number, right? What's the total operating income for Microsoft? Probably something like 30 billion, 20 billion. And then that's where we put our no's and yeses. So this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have numbers here, yes, no, here in this column. Okay, what I still need to do is the website. What's the website that we need to use to get this information? If you remember, in fact, let's not do remember. Let's do one more step here. I apologize. This is taking way too long. Let's do another macro. I'm going to record a macro. And I'm going to come here and I am going to do my legacy web query because I want the macro language, this VBA, from this query. That's what I need. I'm just going to go to that random website, literally random website, import it. Where do I want to import it? A2 is where I want it to go. And it comes in. And this is this web query. So the web query is now in this tab. And what I want to do is I want to record the macro that says right click anywhere on this web query, edit query, and I'm going to put in a different address. Okay. And where am I going to do that? Let me stop recording, come over here. Here is all of that web query stuff. Do you guys remember all this? We've done this before. And here is the URL. So let me give you the correct URL. And I think you guys would be set to go. Here's the correct URL. In fact, let me try it on a browser first to know it works. The VBA code and announcement. You want to go to this website. If you remember before, we've gone to this website here, finance.yahoo.com/quote/the ticker. We actually need to go to the financials page of the ticker. And the way we do that is we type in financials after the ticker. So we have finance.yahoo.com/quote. Here is the ticker that we have to replace, and that's the entire URL. So if I were to come here, what this would look like in the code is the following. I would paste this in. And instead of AAPL, I'm going to do a concatenation. And then put financials on the end of it, just like that. So this is pretty similar to what we did before up to this point. We had this HTTP finance.yahoo.com/quote/double quotes And then we're going to concatenate that with range A1 value. That's going to pull the value of range A1, which is going to be right here. This is the one where we paste the name in from here. We copy it and we paste it in here. It's going to take that cell value and put it into this URL string. And that's going to give us the financials. And if you remember, we took this one out here. The command type equals 0. You can take that one out and you keep everything else. Let's see, I have one too many double quotes here.
Can you go back to the formula?
Yes. Oh, yeah, this is the URL that you need right there. This is that line right there. Let me put this one in here. That is the website. Okay, questions, comments, concerns? Please.
Web legacy. What's that first website?
I just went to random.org.
Random.org.
If you remember, if you go back to our website on, let's see, when did we do that? Was that the first day of class? Was it the second day? Was it the third? It wasn't the third, was it? Yeah, it's the third day. Here's that random.org website right there. So this would be the day. This is like a great recording right here. Video of class. You want to watch this recording? Third day is going to help you out a lot with this project. Does that make sense? This is one you're going to want to review. Okay, great. We did it. Yeah, that was pretty fast. That's pretty fast. Bring some questions Wednesday, and we'll answer some more questions about the project Fallen Angel on Wednesday. Sound good? Try it out. Come Wednesday. See if we can knock it out. That'd be great. Okay, great. Okay, so today we're doing loops. Let's transition yet again. Here we go. You guys are getting your money's worth today. This is great. Let's go to loops, repeating actions. I'm going to click on this unemployment.xlsm file. And this is the one we're going to use for today. Man, you guys, this is great. You guys are going to be so marketable. It's not very consoling. Okay, I'm going to download this file. I'm going to open it up. I am going to, actually, let me go ahead and save it, downloads, and then I want to unblock it. Unemployment, properties, unblock, click OK. Okay. I've unblocked it, I've downloaded it, and now we're going to open it. I'm going to enable macros. I will close my Fallen Angel. Let me just save that as. That's probably fine. Okay, so we have our unemployment data here. Here's our spreadsheet, and let me open up our Visual Basic editor. I'll come over here, and we've got two different modules here in this spreadsheet, in this file. This is a web query sub, which has some really interesting code. I wouldn't confuse it with the project, though. And we're going to use this as part of our code that we're going to write, which is in module 1. So let's go ahead and go to module 1. in the VBA code. So double click on module 1. It should look like this. Does anybody have anything different than this in module 1? Justice is good. Carter is good. Spencer? This guy. Yeah, do view. And you have your project explorer on the top and your properties window on the bottom on the left over here. Yeah, view, project explorer, properties window. So that allows you to click on module 1, right? And then I could just take these out if I didn't want, I could just watch the code. Okay, so you should have this on module 1, right? Now don't run anything yet. I mean, it's probably okay if you do. What we're doing here, let me just walk through this real briefly before we start doing any code. What we have right here is we have one procedure. It's called get data, and it's actually calling another procedure. And it's sending that other procedure some information. So if you notice, this procedure's name, import county data, is the name of this second procedure, the second sub. And it's like this. Remember how we used the word call up here? It turns out the call word itself is optional. So it just doesn't have the call. We're just saying, go to this sub and pass it this information. That's all that says right here. By the way, if you look at the data, what kind of data is this? This is a data of, these are all the counties in the United States of America. So this is an unemployment data by county. We have this list of counties here. And this is the FIPS code. So there's a code for each county. What county are we in? Madison County, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia. Okay, there it is. Madison County, Idaho has this number, 16065. So if I copy that into this place in my code, that means we're saying, go pull the data for Madison County, the unemployment data. And what it's going to do is it's going to send this number down into this sub, into the FIPS position. FIPS is the name of a variable here. Interestingly enough, it's saying inside of this sub, we expect to see information coming into us, and we're going to put that into this variable FIPS. It's going to be a string variable. So what does this sub do? This sub starts, dim s is a worksheet. We know this is a object variable. And it says, oh, which sheet do we want to set s to? We're going to create a new worksheet. We've done this before, right? We've added a worksheet to this workbook. And this says we're going to add it after this worksheet. What is this worksheet? After the number of worksheets that we have in this workbook. How about that? So this code says every time we add a worksheet, we want it to be after the last one. We're counting how many worksheets, put it after that is what that code says. So if I were to run this and click on stop, I'm going to just add a stop right here before we get the data. If I add a stop here, I come up here and run this code. It's going to pass this number into this sub. There it is. FIPS is equal to 16065. It's created a new worksheet through this command, and it's set S to this worksheet. So if I were to come up here in the immediate window and say s.name sheet 1, right? So it's saying, okay, it recognizes it added a new sheet, it put it at the end, and S is referring to sheet 1. Okay, so far so good, right? What about this next line of code? This is an interesting one. Create web query. So this is going to go do a web query. It's going to go pull data from the internet. It's going to put the results in sheet S. That's our sheet 1. We just created that, right? That's where we set this to sheet 1. Range A1, it's going to put at the very top of the sheet. And what is it going to pull? it's going to pull data from bls.gov. This is actual data from the government server. Are we going to get in trouble from this, Brother Chapman? No, we're not. This happens all the time. This is great. What's interesting about this URL, if you look at this URL, we're adding the FIPS code into the URL. So this is a URL that we can use to pull data from the BLS. What's the BLS? Bureau of Labor Statistics. We're actually pulling data from the Bureau of Labor, and we're going to put it in Excel. So how would this look like? Let me copy this into a browser just so we can see it. And then let me replace this FIPS code here. I'll replace this with Madison County 16065. And that's a real URL. So when I hit that, hit enter, this is what comes up. Look at that. This is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And this is a real website. So now we're going to go pull that from the BLS website. Are you ready? Here we go. I'm going to hit F5 or play. And it takes a minute here to run. And if we all do it at the same time, we might crash the government servers. No, I'm just kidding. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Okay, it came in. There it is. Look, mine worked. Did yours work? Okay, so it just pulled this data in. It created a new sheet and it pulled this data in. Look at this. So this is Madison County, Idaho. We have 2008 data all the way down to 2024. We have labor force numbers, employment, unemployment, and unemployment rate for Madison County since 2008. Okay, very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this data and we're going to start to learn about some loops. Chris, question? Yeah, good question. This code right here. You know how usually we say dim S's worksheet to create a variable? We're doing the same thing here, except we don't use the word dim. Just because it's not, just because it's coming in when we run the sub. So we expect this information to be here outside of the sub, given to us, rather than from creating it inside the sub. That's the only difference. And it just recognizes that. We could change this to a different name if we wanted to, right? Code, county ID. But then we would want to change this down here to whatever this name is up here, right? So this is just a variable, just like we've done before. We're going to give it a type of variable. We're going to define this as a string, and we're just going to use that variable down here to do that. Okay, good question. Okay, great. Okay, do a neighbor check for me real quick. Is everybody to this point, before I move on, can you tell your neighbor that you're to this point? And if you're not at this point, tell them anyway, because I don't want to wait. No, I'm just kidding. Jared, who's your neighbor? Me? Brennan doesn't have a neighbor. Brennan, who's your neighbor?
Are you there?
Oh, you're not. Okay, let's see. Where are you guys at? You've got it downloaded. Oh, okay. Did you download it?
No.
Oh, okay. You guys are just watching. I'm okay with that. Are you guys there? Okay, help, anybody? Justice?
I only added Madison code, but then when I got here,
And what's the error message?
it just
Hit the play again. Automation error. Oh, that's probably something wrong with your, oh,
want to check, but it seems
go up to tools, references. Oh, click on stop first, sorry. Yeah, now do tools, references. And there might be something there. No, that's good. That should work. And let's go back here. Look, yeah, look. S dot range A1 time series lunch and flips. Here's the Excel all tables false true. Is that what I have up there?
Yeah.
Do I have this ending stuff over here? Let me check. Does he have it? Oh, you're on a different file.
I'm on a different one right now, but I had it a second.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have it pulled up? What's the end of that line right there? Yeah, can you scroll over to the right on that one?
Oh.
Excel all tables, false true. Comma, comma, we got your commas, comma, 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 false true. Great, we can create S dot range A1. And you got S.
The first part worked because it just gave me a new sheet.
Here's your sheet.
Yeah.
That's good. Stop create where it is.
Maybe again, I think that's it. So it stopped.
Okay. And do play again.
But here doesn't.
Yeah, do it one more time. Function if any. Gives you there.
Let's move to the next module.
Oh. Yeah, click on play. Because that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to go back into that module.
Yeah.
Whoops, sorry. Try to play it again. Play again.
Okay, I think that's just what was that.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, it's supposed to
It's
play
pulling.
and not like the next step.
There it is. Got it. Okay, great. Anybody else? Help? We got it? Carter? Hunter? Okay. I think everybody's up to date. I think we got it. Okay, so I want to do another sub here. We're going to create a do loop. And part of the idea is potentially we could call all of these counties, right? If I was in an internship and they said, hey, Brother Chapman, would they say Brother Chapman in an internship? Hey, intern, I want you to go pull all the unemployment data for all these counties. And that could be your internship. Going to this BLS website, copying, pasting the data, and putting it all in here, right? What if we wanted to automate this process? What if we wanted to put all of this data for all of these counties? We would need to make a loop, right? So one of the ways to make a loop is called the do loop. So let's make this a do loop down here. I'm going to come to the bottom and I'm going to create a new sub. Let's say get data do for our do loop. And let's see what this looks like. If I'm going to do multiple rows, I'm going to need to create a row variable. And what type of variable should I use for my row number? What type of byte? Integer? That's how many counties are there? Are there 32,000 counties? 3,200 counties. So integer would work. My own and I like that. My personal opinion though, is that the difference between integer and long is like 2 bytes of memory, right? We're talking very small difference. And if we're talking rows, what's the maximum number of rows I can have in Excel? 1.04 million rows, which will fit inside of a long data type. So I'm just going to use long, row as long. That way I don't have to think about it. I don't have to wonder in my mind, am I going to have enough rows in this sub? Most of the time, I just use long for my row counts, just because I know that all the rows in Excel will fit inside that.
Any problem? Like, let's just say I have so much data and I just all the time use long. Is there anything, like, even if that's too much? I don't know if that makes sense.
Not in this class.
Is there any problem with using just the largest amount?
Like long?
Yeah.
Not in this class, no. Nothing will do in this class, and probably nothing in, I mean, very rarely no. Let's put it that way. Long is better than integer, especially in this situation, just because I've already talked too long about it. You know what I mean? In terms of the mental overhead of thinking about it. So long is a great one to use here. What I wouldn't use is I wouldn't use variant, because variant takes up much more, but more complexly, you never know what you're really going to get with variant, right? Variant tries to get you what it thinks you want. So variant is a very dangerous one, even though it seems to be the easiest for anything, right? If I create a variable, let's use variant for that. Let's use variant for that. It'll get you into trouble on that if you use variant. There are a couple of situations when variant is really good, but that's beyond the scope at this point. So try not to use variant. Other than that, you can use double, single, long. It doesn't make a huge difference. Yeah, good question. Okay, so we have a variable for row. Let's create a do loop here. Do and loop. We're going to do something in this loop, and we're going to do it again and again. We have to know when to stop, right? The other thing I want to do is I want to put row is equal to 2 at the top before we go into the do loop. Why might I want to do that? If I look at the data here, I'm starting on row 2, right? That FIPS code is actually in row 2. So I don't want to start in 1. It's better if I actually just start with row 2 to start out. So I've created a variable. I'm saying start at 2, row equals to 2, and let's do a loop. Another thing is when inside the loop, I probably want to increment my row. Row is equal to row plus 1. So whatever it was, the first time this loop runs, it will be 2. I want to add 1, and now the row will be 3. And then I want to say, hey, let's import the data. So if I import county data, and what I'm doing here is I'm calling, this is the same name as this sub right here. That's how I'm saying, go do this sub and come back, right? I'm saying, call this import county data, but I've got to give it some information. It knows that it's expecting some incoming information, right? It won't run without some incoming information. It says, wait a minute, I need a FIPS number. I need a string to tell me, give me some information. And it requires that's required. That FIPS number, that's a variable, is required to run this. So what's my FIPS? My FIPS is going to be, I'm going to reference the code. And here's how we're going to reference this. County dot. Now, this is an interesting one. Let me pull back my project window. And if you look at this word county, this is actually the code name of this sheet, right? We see counties on the tab. It displays to the user as counties, but the code name for the sheet is actually county. That's like the code name that won't change. If somebody changes this name here, I could rename this to, I don't know, US counties. It changes the tab name, but it does not change the code name. So the code name is the name of the sheet that we can use as a VBA coder that won't change, right? That's like coded. We can actually change that, but you have to go into here, into the property windows to change it. It's not something the average user can change. That's how we can code and not have our sheet names mess up our code, right? If somebody changes the sheet name, our code is not going to die if we use this code name of the sheet. So this is the code name of the sheet. So I'm referencing specifically the county sheet. That's an object. So if I do county dot, I'm going to say cells. Which cell do I want? I want the row, whatever my row is. At this point, it's 2, with the column index being 1, the first column. What's the value of that cell? Okay, so let's just look at that. If I come up here to the immediate window, question mark, county dot cells, row comma 1 dot value, and I hit enter, what is that going to say? What is that going to return? County is the sheet, cells, row is going to be, actually row is not defined, so let me put 2 for row, because 2 would be the row down here in the code when we run this. If I say row 2, column 1 dot value, what would that produce? $1,000. That's it. Row 2, column 1. That's the one right there. Yeah, very good. So cells 2, 1 is referring to the county sheet, row 2, column 1. The value of that is 1,000. If I did row 5, what would row 5, column 1 be? That'd be 1,005, which is this one, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth row down, first column over. That's the value of that. Okay, great. So when I call this and I say, give this number into this sub, it knows which county number to pull. That's all that does right there. And okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to put in my do events. What does do events do? Does anybody remember that one?
Until something happens.
Yeah, very close. I would say this is the thing that prevents you from going into endless loops that will cause you to kill your Excel. And if you haven't saved your work, you could lose a lot of code, right? So the do events is simply like, do you need me for anything, or else I'm going to keep going here on this endless loop. It's this microsecond, millisecond pause in the code that VBA will look up and say, do you need me for anything? Okay, if not, I'm going to keep going. This allows you to pause the code if you accidentally write a bad do loop, right? I mean, this is something, it's good coding practice to just put in a do events every time you write a do loop. Like for right now, if I accidentally hit go, or if I accidentally hit run or F5, is there a stop point in this do loop? No, it's going to keep going forever and ever and ever. Maybe until it gets to row 1.04 million, and then it will error out because it's out of rows, right? That might stop it. But it's going to do exactly what I tell it to. But until, we have to tell it when to stop, right? When do we want this to stop? That's our next step. So we have this row increment. We're going to import this row. We're going to call this sub procedure for all of these counties, which we're not going to do, by the way. I don't think we're going to do all of that today. And we have a do events. But we need to tell the loop when to stop. So when should we stop? There's a couple ways to do this. One way is we can say do until this value, right? This county.cells row, until this value is empty. So there's a function called isEmpty. So we could say do this loop until this value is empty. Once that's empty, once that's true, it would stop the loop. It would break the loop and go out of the loop, right? So in other words, which row is the last row of counties? If I do control down, that's going to be row 3,274. So once this gets to 3,275, once this row increments to 3,275, it would be true that the value is going to be empty. So let's check that up here. Question mark, is empty county.cells, what was the number? 3274, comma 1 dot value. Is that empty? False. Okay, that's a good sign. Why is that good? 3,274, that is the last row. If I do question mark is empty county.cells 3275, comma 1 dot value, that's going to be true. It's saying that this cell right there is empty, and that's when it would leave the loop. So we could say do until is empty this value, then it would stop the loop. We can also do, let me show you another way to do this. A do loop, we can use the while word. So instead of until, we can say while. do while is empty, county dot cells, row, comma, one dot value. So while this is empty, then we can do that as many times as the cell's empty, right? That's kind of the reverse of what we're talking about. Another way to do it, which I think is probably more common, the one that I use probably the most frequently, is do until county.cells row comma one dot value is equal to double quotes, double quotes, like two double quotes. What that's saying is do until that value is blank. And that's an easy way to say, go through this entire column of numbers. Why are we going through, by the way? Because we're incrementing, right? Every time we go through the loop, we're going to go the next row until the value is blank. So that gives us a stop. And let's add a couple more in here. Another thing we want to be aware of is we can always exit the do. And if we wanted to, if I left this in like this, then it would run once and then it would exit, right? So this isn't something that I would want to do unless I wanted to exit after once. But there's an exit do option, which just kicks you out of the loop. It's like, okay, you're done. Just kicks you out. Another thing here is, let's just shrink this. So if row is greater than 100, then exit do. This is just to prevent us from doing more than 100 rows. Does that make sense? That's just for our purposes today, right? We'll say, okay, if you get to more than 100 rows, go ahead and exit the do. We don't have to do all 3,274 counties. We'll just do the first 100, and that gets us through. Okay, great. So now that we have this, let's add, I want to come up here. We could ping the internet for all of these, but I kind of don't want to do that right now. So what I really want to do is I want to come back up here to the first sub. And let's just print it. All right, let's just print the, this will be before we create a new sheet. Let's just print the FIPS number and call it good. And that way we won't have to query the internet. That just takes a lot of time, a lot of bandwidth for today. So well, let's say debug dot print FIPS, and that'll print it up here to the immediate window. And then we can do exit sub after that. And if we exit the sub here, we still have this code down here, but it's not going to run. We're just going to exit this sub. It'll skip adding a worksheet, and it will skip the web query. Just for development purposes, just so that we can have a little bit faster development just for right now, right? So now what we should do is if we run this sub up here, the get data sub, we're going to pass it the county ID. It's going to print the FIPS, and then it's going to exit. So we haven't even, but we need a way to call this sub, right? So let's run this sub. Let's just run this directly, and we'll start with row 2. It's going to call the import county data, and we should see 100 FIPS codes up here in the immediate window. If all this works, ready, set, go. Okay, so I just was in this get data do sub. I hit play, and it went and it called the import county data sub and went through this loop 100 times, and then it quit, right? So if we go to 0228, 02280, here is the 100th county in Wrangell, Petersburg census area, Arkansas. And then it stopped. We told it to stop after 100, exit the do loop, and we're good. If we wanted to, we could delete this line and we could go pull data, and it would create 100 sheets in our Excel, right? We could have just created 100 new sheets with all of this data from the BLS government. Did anybody do that by accident by any chance? I'm just curious. Yeah, I don't recommend. It would probably take a while. Okay, great. Let's do another loop. There's another loop here called the for loop. We've seen this one a little bit before. Let's create a new sub for this one as well. Sub get data for, and part of what I'm trying to demonstrate here today is there's multiple ways to run a loop. And again, this is the stuff, the looping, I mentioned this last time, I think the looping in my mind is really quite powerful. This goes beyond BA 215. This goes beyond recording macros in the sense that you can do this repetitive action as many times as you want. It's very, very powerful. It gets you into trouble. You could get an endless loop with the do loops, but it's very, very powerful. The for loop is a little bit different because it has a definite start and a definite end. So let's walk through this the for loop. Let's go ahead and start a row variable. Dim row is long. And let's create a for loop. Let's see, is that what I want to do? Yeah, for. It starts with for and it ends with next. So that's kind of the boundaries of the loop, a for and a next. And what we're going to do is we're going to say for row equal to 2 to 100. So notice what we're kind of defining the value of this right inside the loop, right at the beginning of this loop. We're saying we've already defined the variable up here. We're going to create a for loop and say row is equal to 2 to 100. We want it to run this many times. Start with 2, go to 100. Once it gets to 101, then you're done. Quit the loop, right? So we're saying start with 2, go to 100. And inside of the loop, what we need to do is we don't have to increment. It's already going to increment by itself. So it's going to do this line automatically with this code. So we don't need to increment our for next loop. Let's go ahead and do a debug.print. And we'll print the row so we know which row it's at. And then we'll call the import county. Import county data, just like we did before, county.cells row, (1.value). And I'm just copying that up from what we did before, right? We're just saying, okay, copy this line from the previous sub. This is the line that we're going to repeat however many times we want. In this case, we're going to go from 2 to 100 times. So it's at 98 times, 99 times. Import county data. What are we going to import? We're going to import the value of whatever row we're on in that first column. That is the FIPS code. That's what that's the county data we're going to import. And it's similar like we did to the other. Similar like we did to the other loop here. I'm just going to say if row is greater than 100, then exit for. And that just prevents us from doing all the rows. If row is greater than 100, then exit for. Okay, so now we can run this loop. Get data for. We've created a row variable. We've told it how many times to run. Notice the difference here. The do loop is saying do until something is true. This is saying, no, we just want you to run 2 to 100 times. That's it. There's no condition. There's no if. Run 2 to 100 times, exactly that amount, and we're done. Garrett? Yeah, good question. Kind of the same reason up here that row is 2 up here, because our data starts on row 2 in the sheet, right? So if we started with row equals to 1, in fact, that's a good question. Maybe we should do that. If row was 1, and we said row equals 1 to 100, when it pulls this value, what would it pull? It wouldn't be a number. That's right. What would it give you? That's right. That's right. So it would try to pull the data for this code and it would error out. It's like, no, there's no website that has this in the URL, right? FIPS code is not a valid FIPS code. So that wouldn't work. So we have to start something other than 1 for our row is equal to. So we'll start with row equals to 2. Yeah, good point. Question, please. Right. No, this is very specific to a from and a to end. What you can do is you could do 2 to 100 with a step of 2. So if you put a step 2 here on the end of this, you're saying do evens, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. You could do that. You could also do a negative step. If you wanted to do from row equals 100 to 2, you could actually have row decrease by either step 1, step 2, step 3, however many, but it could actually go down too. So you can control whether you want it to go up or down and by how many you want to go up or down. And that becomes pretty valuable, right? So let me change this back to 2 to 100. And if there's no step there, it defaults to step 1. That's just the default. So it's going to default to step 1. And again, we're using this row as part of this value, right? What's the value we want to send to this sub? Whatever row we're on, it's going to change with our row. So it probably takes a minute. The more you use for loops, the easier it becomes to figure out what is the number I'm trying to use here so that this is correct, right? And that can take a little bit of thinking. You want it to do it a certain number of times, but you also want to make sure that you're referencing the correct row later on, right? Which is pretty powerful. Okay, great. Any other comments, questions? Okay, good question. Let's see. Should we do a hard one? Do we have time for a hard one? Last 4 minutes? I'm seeing lots of yeses. Like almost everybody in the class is saying yes. Thanks for laughing, Justin. I appreciate it. Okay, let's do one more just for kicks. We've done a do loop. We've done a for loop. Let's do one more. This is called for each. So we've done collections before. We've talked about collections. Actually, let's do the easy one first. Can we do the easy one? Yeah, let's just finish on an easy one. For each sheet. So I'm going to write another sub. This is called for get data for each sheet. What we can do here is we can dim object variables. And let's say dim s as worksheet. And we can say for each s in this workbook dot worksheets. And that's referring to a collection, right? So again, this is a for loop. We have a for and a next, just like we had up here, a for and a next up here. But this is a different kind of for next because we're using objects as the way to control the loop, to start and stop the loop. For each S, it's talking about for each worksheet in this workbook, do the following. And let's just keep this simple. Let's just do debug.print s.name, right? We're just going to print the name of the worksheet. So, and that's for each worksheet in the workbook. Okay, so again, here's our subname. Here's our object variable. For each S, for each worksheet in this workbook.worksheets. This is a collection of sheets. This is a little bit more abstract, right? We're not talking numbers or cell values. We're talking collections. This is a collection of worksheets. For each sheet in this collection, print the name. So we're not saying 1, 2, 2, because we have 2 sheets here, right? We're not saying for S is equal to 1 to 2. We're saying for each sheet in this collection, print the sheet name. So I can play this and it'll come up and go through. It knows how many sheets there are. It knows the name of each one of those sheets, and it will go through all those sheets, however many there are, and that will be the loop. So the loop is around the collection of objects, not just a number, not just a numerical value. This can be incredibly helpful. Think about a folder with 100 files in it, or you don't even know how many files are in it, or the file numbers change every day, right? You could write code that says, go to this folder, for each file in this folder, open it up, copy some data, close the file, go to the next file, right? So we don't have to know exactly how many files are in there. We don't have to count. We could just say, for every object in this collection, do this code. So this is a very powerful way to work with collections of objects. Okay, very good. Hopefully this is helpful. I'm feeling a little bit guilty about that project. The more I think about it, the more guilty I feel. But you guys got it. You guys got this. Bring some questions about that project on Wednesday. And I feel like I did the whole homework for you, though. I feel less guilty about that. So I'm feeling like this, my guilt is kind of evened out, right? I feel really guilty about and not very guilty about the homework. So, all right, thank you all. We'll see you guys.